Hi, Terron.
Hey, hey, how's everything going?
It's going quite well, thank you. You got a free evening tonight, have you?
Yeah, I got a couple free evenings,
Oh,
so
that's nice.
just trying to take advantage. Probably
Mhm.
try to catch up with some people who I normally don't have time for whatever reason. So yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
but I was able to look at. Oh, I'm sorry.
Carry on, carry on. You
No,
you
no,
were
no. I was
able to
able to
look
look
at.
at what you shared with me. I was just interested in what event you had went to earlier today.
Oh yes, the video of on feminism.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, the one with the rational female.
Yeah. I saw. I mean, to be honest, I saw her elsewhere on my YouTube feed because she spoke with Ali Dawa, and there's some other person who records a lot of what goes on at Speaker's Corner now. I think named Sam Dawa. I think that's where I saw. But anyway, it might have been elsewhere. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to look for it. I had it up on my in my window. But yeah, is interesting. What was she talking about? I really didn't catch too much of. I mean, I caught more of what she was talking about with Ali Dawa. She seemed to lean more towards feminism. At the same time, she has a certain respect for religion, but she doesn't adhere to it. I don't even know if she's a Muslim or what disposition.
She's not Muslim. She's made um, an anti-Islam video um, on her channel, um, but she's also anti-feminist.
Okay, I'm surprised. I really wasn't paying attention then. I didn't know that she made a anti-Islam video, and I didn't know she was anti-feminist. I thought she leaned more towards that. I'm really just totally thrown off by her look. Then, obviously, uh, because looking at her, you would think one thing, while
Pink
what you're
hair.
telling me is totally different.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I was also quite confused by her because, pink hair means feminist or with leftist views, but she's known for standing up in Speaker's Corner with a sign saying feminism is trash.
Wow, interesting.
Um, but I mean, I guess she does behave like a feminist, I suppose. I mean, because she is anti-Islam, but she's been to the um, what do you call it, Jalsa Salani. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't. And I was gonna ask, what event was it that you were speaking with her at? It looks like a Ahmadi event, or was it
That's
something
right.
else?
That's
Okay.
right. Um, and so she has somewhat revised her views about Muslims, but perhaps only with regard to Ahmadi Muslims. It's
What?
very difficult because most people are so um, contradict themselves really, even in their likes and dislikes.
Well, Ahmadi Muslims are, I don't want to say an unusual case, but you will get that a lot. I'm not even going to say only with them, but with some of these, what could be considered by other Muslims fringe Muslim groups, the Ahmadis, the Ismailis. You'll find non-Muslims or people who might even be very critical of Islam, not having that same vitriol for uh, for these groups. So what brought her to that Ahmadi? I mean, what was the event even about?
Well, it's basically their annual convention or um, gathering where they meet the Khalifa. Well, he's the only Muslim leader who calls himself a Khalifa, and it took place in Alton in Hampshire uh, last weekend.
Okay,
And
last weekend. Well, I guess because you just only posted it today, I thought it took place today. That's why I thought you had went to it earlier. Interesting. Okay.
yeah, so it was yesterday, and um, I was invited to it through meeting an Ahmadi at Speaker's Corner.
Is it the one that you live stream with usually?
Yes, that would be Khaled.
Okay. I haven't watched
Uh,
any of your live streams with him, but I've heard a little bit about you guys' discussions and whatnot.
oh, what? Because somebody mentioned it.
It's just brought up in passing. I've listened to a few spaces with you and Ghazal where she mentioned something about the discussion that you guys have had, and I've also come across your channel and seen you speaking, or at least a thumbnail with you speaking with him. So I'm a little bit familiar that you've been talking to the Ahmadi, or at least an Ahmadi,
Hmm.
recently quite a bit. And
Hmm.
I will
Hmm.
say they are a very organized community. The Ahmadi Mosque is next to, I mean, there's a couple of mosques I attend on Juma on Friday. Well, now that I'm working this new job and my manager as well as my other colleagues are Muslim, and on Friday we're able to just take a break and go pray. The masjid I would normally go to if I was just at home hanging out by myself is right next to an Ahmadi masjid, and that Ahmadi masjid is actually very nice. It's very nice. Um, they seem to be very decent people. Interesting enough, I have a relative who's an Ahmadi, to be honest, a cousin
Hmm.
from Arkansas who, when I had just converted to Islam, I went to a family gathering. He was visiting, staying at my auntie's house, and he saw that I was reading a book on the 40 Hadith by Nawawi, and he instantly recognized that's a book on Islamic, or a book with Islamic material. And he had given me a book by Muhammad Ali, who had also translated one of the Qurans, or has a translation of the Quran that the Nation of Islam uses a lot, or that you'll find in a lot of Western bookstores. Um, yeah, he gave me a book by Muhammad Ali that was on the history of Islam and other certain topics, the sciences of Islam and whatnot. And I didn't know it was the guy was an Ahmadi, but yeah, it was very interesting. And that's a whole nother history about the Ahmadis, and how, we always talk about the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X journey to Sunni Islam, or what some consider to be Sunni orthodoxy, and Black Americans' journey into that as well. They don't talk about how Ahmadis also were giving dawah to the Black American community, and that there were a significant number of Black American Ahmadi Muslims. And you'll still come across an older generation of these Ahmadi Black Muslims, if you, depending on what kind of circles you involve yourself in. But yeah, they have a very interesting history, and yeah, they're a very well put together community.
Mm. So did you have a look at their mosque when? Would you say?
Well, it has security outside. I mean, I walk because of where I park. Uh, when I go to this masjid on Friday, I walk past it, and there's usually security outside. They have a really nice gated fence. Again, it's a very attractive mosque. It's probably the nicest one in Manchester, next to the central mosque in Manchester. Um, and but I've never gone inside. No, I've never gone inside. The Ahmadis are a sticky community to engage with. I mean, I really don't identify as a Sunni, but even some Sunnis who might even see them as Muslim, I don't know if they would see them as Sunni. That might be a stretch, but who see them as Muslim are very shy expressing those views to other Sunnis who might feel strongly against them being Muslim, because that's a huge, which for me isn't a huge thing, but for a lot of Muslims, that's a huge obstacle to get over, seeing them as Muslims for whatever reason. I understand that there's differences also within the Ahmadi movement, like there's Lahoris, and there's another group that identifies as something else, from what I understand. So it's a very interesting group I know very little about, but they get a bad shtick. But what you see from them is is nothing but good. So it just makes you wonder.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think is the problem with them, as you understand it?
Their theology, or the fact that they, some views attached to Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, um,
Hmm.
and something about him being the return of Christ, or the return of Jesus.
Yeah,
Uh,
I thought it was jolly clever the way, um, how, they kind of use the story and were being legalistic about it because, as I understand it, Muslims are not allowed to say that there is a prophet subsequent to Muhammad, and obviously Ghulam
but they
Ahmad.
pop up throughout Islamic history, though. Like I think even the Berbers tried to not even long after the Prophet Muhammad passed away, when Islam spread into North Africa, and before North Africa became a Sunni stronghold under Malikism. Uh, when there was a lot of quote unquote heterodox movements going on in North Africa, there was one that had produced its own, who believed that he was a prophet. I think the same thing had gone on in Iran. You know, you see the same thing with the Jewish figure in the Ottoman, Sebbatai Sevi. Um,
Sabbatai and Frankists. Is that what you're going to say, or not?
no. There was a Jewish guy in the Ottoman Empire, Sebbatai Sevi, who
What claim to be the Messiah? That's
yeah, and then claimed to he made some kind of out there claims, and then the Ottoman Sultan made him take it back, or he was going to kill him.
mhm.
And yeah, he was a Jewish mystic, ordained rabbi from Smyrna. If anybody wants to look into him and all that he did in the Ottoman Empire, and how he made some out there claims, and the Ottoman Sultan made him recant those claims, or he was going to kill him, and so he recanted them, and then he found the Ottoman, I think, Sultan gave him a place, a job in his, in his not castle, but
Palace.
palace, yeah,
Mhm.
as like a doorman or something like that. Now, don't quote me on all of this, but he's an interesting figure too. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that in Islamic history, you see this claim popping up all throughout. Either somebody claiming to be the Mahdi, or somebody claiming to be a prophet after the prophet, and that no, the prophet was sent to his people, the Arabs, and I'm sent to you, my people who were not Arabs. And even to the point that these Berbers allegedly came with, or this Berber alleged prophet came with his own kind of Quran that had like 80 chapters and in the Berber language. So you see these things pop up. So in my mind, it's not something foreign. In maybe I wouldn't say it's a part of the Islamic tradition. I mean, you could argue that. I mean, some people actually argue that it was the Islamic tradition that paved the way for these kind of ideas, at least with the return of Christ and Ahmadiyya and stuff like that. But
I
even if
thought
you
it was
don't say
a
it's a
Jewish
part of the,
idea.
huh?
I thought it was a Jewish idea. This idea of a prophet returning. The Messiah.
It
You know,
could have.
that,
There's a lot of baggage from Christianity and Judaism that crept into Islam. I'm not saying it's bad, or I'm not putting a value judgment on any of this baggage, if it was good or bad, or whatever. But yeah, there are certain ideas that definitely, um, from a simplistic reading of the Quran, you don't see. But when it comes to traditions, and we know how kind of traditions and things that are passed on from uh mouth to mouth for a certain amount of time, and then putting into written, and then written down, can kind of take shape in different forms. um and then people have their own ideas for better, for anyway, I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, I find it interesting that these things, at least from a simple reading of the Quran, you don't see it, but then elsewhere in traditions, other historical accounts or whatever, you see them popping up. And I just wonder how much, a lot of people wonder how much of that is what crept over from maybe Jewish or Christian converts who took a certain understanding about things and Islamicized them to a certain degree. Um, but yeah, so
I mean, the
I don't
story is the
blame.
same, isn't it? I mean, the story is the same. That some man is going to turn up and he'll be the Messiah, and that will signal the end times. I think that story is common in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's just that the identity of that actual person is,
Disputed.
yeah, that's the only thing, really.
Yeah, and who knows, and who's to say that there was like a creeping in? It could actually be a legit. I don't. I want to say I really don't buy the whole return of Christ and Mahdi and stuff like that.
I mean, it's not even in the Quran. The Mahdi isn't even mentioned in the Quran, is it?
No, it's not. nor is
And
the
actually, if you read the verse on Jesus properly, it doesn't say that Jesus will be returning either.
that's the opinion that I have as well. And I just don't really bank my salvation or how I should behave on these type of eschatological. And then also there's a lot of work on how eschatological writings work. You know, there's a bit of history. You know, they write a lot of history in the beginning to kind of lead you up to a point to where you believe in the story that's being told. You know, they use real situations, real events, and then they kind of go left after they kind of got you hooked. Then they start introducing a whole bunch of other things that, you know, aren't really as concrete, but because you've already followed a certain trajectory, you know, you're just susceptible to believing a lot of what else is coming down the pipeline with these stories. I mean, there's an article that I read about it by Andreas Gorka, who had worked on eschatological traditions within Islam. I found it to be a very interesting read. But again, in my opinion, it's not to say that it's not true. I personally don't believe it, but I'm open to it being a possibility. I mean, there are the three monotheistic traditions by the fact that there's going to be a Jesus return or somebody coming back, whether it be the Messiah who under the Jewish conception or who Muslims and Christians believe it to be. And there's going to be some type of cosmic battle that's going to really settle the score for everything. You know,
Hmm.
it's a
But
very difficult thing to grapple with from my perspective, at least.
well, well, I suppose I think it's a complete waste of time. And I think, okay, even if I believed in God, it's like, well, whether the Messiah is coming or not, we're still supposed to obey God's laws, right? So just do that, instead
Exactly.
of arguing about nothing that can't, just won't get us anywhere, because you might have a different conception of what's going to happen, and I will have a different conception about who's actually going to arrive. But why, we would know anyway. If he doesn't arrive within our lifetimes, what would be the point of arguing about it? And if he does, we'll soon find out. So I mean, that's why I think it's a waste of time. And also, if he's coming, um whether he's coming or not, we're still expected to obey God's laws, aren't we? So I mean, no change of behavior is required, whatever we believe, whatever version of the end times that we believe in. We're
Well,
still
I do want to
expected to
say in the
obey.
Islamic case, even in the Christian case, but see, I don't know how true, or I don't know how much of this is came from the mind of Hal Lindsey, and I don't know how much of this is within Christian tradition. But I remember how Lindsey used to write about a lot of stuff, the Great Big Planet, or uh, what's that about disappearing or something, the rapture. And you know, at least from a Christian perspective, he had a massive influence on how some Christians imagined the end times. And there was a certain, okay, I need to act right, I need to be right with God before this happens, or I'm not going to be taken away to heaven and I'm going to stay here on earth and have to endure all what's coming down the pipeline because I didn't live right, and that's a part of my punishment. Doesn't mean you're going to go to hell, but definitely mean you're going to have to endure things that if you were righteous you wouldn't have to. And I, even from an Islamic perspective, from what I understand, even to recognize the Dajjal, you need to be on deen, or you could be led astray by who you believe him to be based on his falsehood and tricks. So you know, there is a certain, you need to be on par, you need to be on your deen, practicing your religion, for when these things come about you can see them for what they are. Because otherwise, if you're not, even if you claim to be a believer and you are, you know, you might not have that you might not have what it takes in order to recognize or to see through the veil, I guess. I don't know, lack of better words, but yeah. So there is a certain degree of having to get your life right, um, or to practice the law in order to understand what's coming down the pipeline. Otherwise, you can be easily led astray. So I will say that, but I will say that it does create a kind of, oh, we're gonna put all of our money on or it creates kind of, I don't want to say a fatalistic, maybe that's not the right word, but it puts people in a position where they don't take charge of what's going on right now. They just like, uh, kind of, oh, well, only the Mahdi is going to fix this. Only when Jesus comes back is such and such going to be solved. And it's like, nah, man, I don't really see it like that. Like, we still have a certain amount of agency in order to, even if you believe that, at least you shouldn't try to. And then we have traditions about how if the last day is coming, still continue doing what you planned on doing, even such as planting a tree. If you started planting a tree and the day of judgment is coming, continue planting that tree. So even if you were to take that mindset, believe in the Mahdi and Jesus, if there's still things that are lacking in this world and you believe that Islam and Muslims are capable of doing it, there's no reason to just put it on the Mahdi or Jesus to actualize it, in my opinion, at least,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that seems to me to be the sensible view because, irrespective of whether the Messiah is going to come in our time or not, the deal is still the same, right? We're supposed to obey God's laws, and we will be sent to the worst place or the better place, depending on whether we pass the exam, which is
Exactly.
which this life is the examination hall of. So, and I think the Jews are the worst culprits because they're basically saying, oh well, this is so terrible, we can't even begin to untangle this mess, so we'll just have to wait for the Messiah, which is what they say. I mean, the Orthodox, the ultra
Yeah, I was
Orthodox.
about to say the Orthodox, because then you have a whole uh other Jews that are very active in trying to see change in the world, and the Jews are a very complicated community,
Well,
to
I mean,
be.
yes, they are because there's so many, different views about the same thing. But I'm just talking about the ultra orthodox because I think it's silly to even, talk about secular Jews because obviously they're heretics according to, the religious Jews. So, um, for them, what do you think they were made God's chosen people to do? Do you have a view on that, Terron?
What it says to God, what it says in the Quran, like they were just, they were supposed to be, you know, somewhat of what they believe about themselves. If they still have that, if it really just solely rests with them like it used to, they definitely were supposed to have a special place in this world, as
As
spiritual.
God's chosen people, right?
Yeah,
That's what they call
in a
themselves.
spiritual, I don't, in what sense they were, I give them that, yeah,
Yeah,
in that
and then
spiritual, religious sense,
the
guiding
obvious,
mankind. And
yeah.
even I still find what I hear from rabbis on a spiritual and metaphysical level very enlightening. You know what I'm saying? Like I was
Hmm.
hearing a rabbi talking to Richard Dawkins, and of course Richard Dawkins was hammering him on a empirical level, wanting to evidence for a lot of stuff he was saying. But I still found a lot of what the rabbi is saying about humanity and how you're supposed to treat, and I get that a lot from when I listen to Orthodox rabbis, and I
Was
really
it was that
believe.
Rabbi Sachs by any chance?
I can't remember. I'll send you a link who it was. But, Richard Dawkins was being very hard on him. The rabbi was being very cordial. Of course, against these people who are so big on science, it's very difficult for religion because of what they deal with versus what someone like Richard Dawkins deal with. But I still found what the rabbi was saying interesting and enlightening.
Hmm.
Uh,
What was he
so
saying? Can you remember what he was
Man, I
saying?
can't remember off the top of my head. It was just more of a feeling I got, like he was just speaking about humanity. He was speaking about scripture, his interpretation of things. He was being hammered about Abraham sacrificing his son. His interpretation of it I thought was pretty interesting, about how if God was to tell Abraham straight up, not to, sacrificing your children is wrong in a culture where sacrificing your children happened quite a lot from what he said. It would have been a shock to the system. So he kind of, he went through a whole bunch of other mental gymnastics to explain that story, but I still found it to be a very interesting take, one I haven't heard. And there was a few other things within that discussion that really resonated with me. I was listening to it as like more background music as I was doing something, or not back. It was like I was listening to something, and then that came on, and I just continued listening, and certain things grabbed my attention uh, while I was doing what I was doing. But yeah, I still get that from a few Jewish rabbis. You know what I'm saying? It's not.
Mhm.
Uh,
So you're saying you agree that the story of Abraham and Isaac was about um, ceasing the practice of human sacrifice? Is that what you were saying?
that's what he was saying,
And
and there
do you
was
agree with it?
no, but I thought his. I mean, I don't know. I really don't have. It's not something I really thought of, or it's not. I really don't have a position on it. I'm just kind of describing the kind of what I get from rabbis when I hear them, and I can kind of see what their purpose is, or what their purpose was, what the Jewish purpose was that God has set out for them. Being a kind of spiritual, metaphysical leaders of the world, I guess.
Being light
In
unto nations.
yeah, light unto nations, basically. It doesn't mean dominating, having an empire, controlling over or whatnot. These just could be human interpretations that, you find wacko things like that everywhere concerning people. But I definitely believe that's something that they were set out to do. And for a period, I mean, they kind of, I don't want to say, I don't want to say achieved it, but, Jewish influence religion, the Abrahamic. I mean, I don't want to say Jewish because I know people find they weren't Jews in the Bible. People can argue that Jews, the term Jew came later, but
Well, I mean, they came. I mean, Jews were created when the Torah was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. That was when Jews were created, weren't they?
okay, I don't know. I really, I do understand that. At least back when I used to look into a little bit more what could be considered anti-Semitic, propaganda. That was one of the contentions that the people of the Bible aren't Jews; they're Israelites or whatever, and Jew only came about at a certain time, and whoopty whoopty woo, all the gymnastics. I really don't
Well, I
look
mean,
into
I'm just going by their story. I mean,
Okay,
obviously.
I accept that if that's the case. I'm in no position to dispute it, but I'm only saying that I can kind of see where what was the purpose of them being the chosen people once upon a time. And I think who knows, because Muslims say that it was taken away from. I know Christians say that they were, at one point Christians were saying they were the new Israelites, and that they're upholding the covenant of Abraham. Um, and so, it might have been taken away from them. I know people make arguments from their scripture that God is going to take away if you guys don't start acting right and give it to some, people quote Deuteronomy and, other Muslims know
Are
all
you
the.
familiar with the book of Jeremiah?
Yeah. I was going to say something about the book of Jeremiah too, about how it's supposed to mention something about, I mean, maybe you probably know better than I do. All this stuff is fuzzy for me, but I'm
Uh-huh.
familiar.
Well, basically, the book of Jeremiah says that the Jews are the bride of God, and analogies are being made to Jews being an openly adulterous wife. And the book of Jeremiah says that even though the Jews behave in a way that is analogous to a prostitute prostituting herself to passers-by under a shady tree, God will take them back. So that's um, pretty definite anyway. That God
Yeah,
will
but that
take them
doesn't
back.
mean in exclusion of other people.
Well, no. Okay. So this is my take on it. It's like they're the people who know they're not supposed to practice idolatry. I mean, the most unusual thing about the Jew is that they don't have an idol, and that was really what annoyed the Romans so much, because the Romans would basically conquer uh, country after country or tribe after tribe, and then say, give us your idol and we will put it amongst the, in our pantheon. So they basically, added all the idols of their conquered, of people they've conquered, and said, we're all one big family, and here's a Roman pantheon of all the deities of all the people that we have conquered, and we are one big happy family. And this actually reminds me of what Mecca must have represented, because it had all those idols, right? And it got all the tourism, the pilgrims who would want to go to Mecca to see their particular idol being you know displayed on the pantheon. Um, so the whole point then of Jews is to remind everybody, well, that you're not supposed to practice idolatry, according to the seven Noahide laws. Are you familiar with those, the seven Noahide laws?
Yeah. When I first met you, you used to bang on a lot about the seven Noahide laws. You definitely pounded into a lot of people's heads when you used to speak about it. I didn't know anything about it before then, but yeah, I'm fully aware. I just don't think I think the Jews represent how their story won out above everybody else. To inspire so many, or at least two other traditions that came after.
And
Um,
they want to supersede them. It's like, we're going to take your God, and then we're going to take your place, which is basically what the Christians did, right? Instead of being God's chosen people, Catholics call themselves God's people, and then the Muslims said, well, we're taking over now, and so I'm imagining that must be most a bit annoying. But anyway, I mean, Jews are still around, and there's been an argument that the fact that they're still around is evidence that God exists, because by all accounts, by any kind of expectation, you wouldn't expect people like the Jews to have survived, because when they began, it was as fleeing slaves. You know, it's just it's bad enough to be a slave, but to be landless, fleeing slaves. I mean, where are you going to go? Who's going to take you? And I mean, the whole idea of the conquest of Canaan was because that they listened to God, and everything went right for them. I mean, I think that was the story. They got manna from heaven. God was actually talking to Moses directly, and then they conquered Canaan. And once they conquered Canaan, they just couldn't keep it together. They kept lapsing into idolatry.
mm,
So I mean, the first temple was destroyed, right? And it was for idolatry, I believe. And then they were captured and taken as slaves to Assyria, I think. And then after an exile of 80 years, they were let back into Israel, and then it was all right again for a bit, until they lost control again, and the second temple was destroyed. And I mean, rabbis say the reason why they were being punished this time was the terrible things they would say about each other, the evil speech, the lashon hara.
well, I'm pretty sure that's his take on it, and it's probably a valid take. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other things going on too that led to their destruction. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, the dispute between the Sadducees and the Pharisees.
yeah. So sectarianism.
Yes, so basically, the Sadducees were the priesthood, and the priesthood apparently didn't believe in an afterlife. And I thought that that's actually quite an interesting take on it, because it's like, well, if you don't believe in the afterlife, you won't act in a way that would get you to the better place in the afterlife, and so you would behave badly, and
Now, but
whether
they believe something else though. Don't they? Don't they say that you'll believe you'll be with God or something? I've heard a modern Jewish person say that there is no like paradise or something like that, but you'll be with God or something, and that will be total bliss or something. You'll be one with, I don't know, it's something like that. But I wonder if that's akin to what the people you're talking about believed pertaining to what's going to happen in the afterlife.
Well, as far as the scripture is concerned, that there's no mention of, wonderful things in the afterlife. They don't even talk about it.
Mm.
There's no mention of what the afterlife will be. So I guess that was one of the reasons why the Sadducees said, well, maybe there isn't. But Maimonides, who came after the Sadducees, said, of course there is. We have to believe there is, otherwise the whole um, purpose of believing in God just isn't wouldn't be working properly, and I think that must be right.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I do fear for what's coming next or what will come immediately if I do certain things. Like I think it's a weird pickle that you're in.
Well,
Uh,
well, because okay, today I was just talking about how we act according to our beliefs. So if I believe in the afterlife, then I would want to obey God's laws, because I see that obedience to God's laws would get me to the better place in the afterlife. And that would be me behaving in a way that an atheist would just not do, because an atheist believes that this life is the only life, and therefore he mustn't pass up any opportunities for enjoyment, or status or whatever, because if you think this life is the only life, then you will grab whatever you can in this life, all the opportunities of pleasure and status and property, and all that, and behave in a terrible way just to get all those things that you think you must enjoy before you are dead. The bucket list idea.
I mean, I don't think it's as clear cut as that. I mean, I see what you're saying, and to a certain degree, I definitely see the potential is there because you don't have any safety tools to kind of deter you from uh, maybe acting in that manner, at least in the way that I conceptualize things. But I've never been an atheist or disbeliever in my life. To say that I've never been in a position where I didn't feel like some kind of retribution is going to come somewhere from somewhere when I do wrong, and I feel like I've seen it immediately, and I feel like I got some things waiting on me if I don't reconcile immediately because I don't know when I'm gonna go. So yeah, I can't. I don't want to say I can't really speak for an atheist or a disbeliever, like or to say that he doesn't in his mind feel he needs to treat people right in secret or behind. He might believe in karma. There could be other things. It'd be interesting, but I don't want to discount and say that they're immoral people because they don't believe in God or they don't have the same like checks and balances that I got in my behavior.
Yeah,
But
I'm
it
not. Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying atheists don't, can't be principled, but it's easier for them not to be principled. I suppose is what I'm
I
trying to
would
say.
want to agree. That is always the question I have for them is, I feel like I don't want to say my behavior. At the end of the day, you are kind of saying that your behavior is rooted in, what you believe about God or what you believe about punishment and threat and reward and stuff like that. But for them, because they don't have that, it's just like, what do you do it for? Like, you could say for the sake of humanity. Um,
For the sake of having a good conscience, for the sake of not wanting to do evil, things that cause people suffering.
But
Um,
then why do you feel? But then why do you feel like that? Why does somebody people who talk about killing who have killed someone always say that first time I did it really bothered me? You know what I'm saying? It really sat with me. I had nightmares and stuff like that. Why do when people do wrong, they feel like, oh, I don't want to walk around with a guilty conscience because there are atheists who feel like that. It just for me, there isn't no. I mean, for me, it would just lead to more questions that I have for them in that sense. Where do you think these kind of feelings come from? Do you think they develop naturally as some type of instinct to get, however people try to rationalize these things with evolutionary biology or something, I don't know. But yeah, for me, yeah, for atheists, that would just get me to engage with him more on the topic. I probably wouldn't be satisfied with my conscience. I don't want to walk around with that kind of feeling. But why don't you?
Well,
You
well
know?
this is, I think, still related to the topic, but there will be people who pretend to believe in God, but will, lie and cheat and steal if they thought they could get away with it. But they would instinctively know that if they said they were an atheist, you'd look at them with more suspicion than if you said, no, you're a believing Jew. And it was, well, yeah, a lot of people pretend, don't they? And
Uh,
that's why once upon a time, to be accused of being an atheist was, the equivalent of being accused of being, a bad person, can't be trusted. But anyway, people sort of forgot about that, and but it's still true in the sense that I guess if you check the prison statistics, you will find that most convicted prisoners don't believe in God or don't come from um, you um, whole families or married parents.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and of course, the whole idea of a man and a woman staying together. I mean, you need there to be trust between the two of them, or it'll just be, well, it's like, why am I doing it for? Looking after these children, paying for them, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was
you know,
talking to my wife about that the other day. That I feel like that's one of the problems with marriage is that people look at what is the point a lot of times, like what is the benefit? What am I getting from it? And I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of religious outlook, metaphysical outlook with certain things like this. There is a deeper meaning when it comes to such unions, but because of the absence of, I think, a religious perspective, you know, a lot more people are looking at like, man, what's the point? Why
yeah. I
should
mean,
I?
what's the point of even marrying somebody? It's like if you don't love them, it will be a nightmare. It will be a nightmare having to, share the same bed with them and live with them and, put up with all that crap. And a lot of people, I guess a lot of people do marry just because, oh, well, it's time, people expect me to, or that's the only way I can progress in life, to move on to a higher status, because who wants to be, I guess in the olden days, to not marry means, oh, there must be something wrong with you. Oh, you couldn't find anybody to marry you. Oh, how sad, so I guess instinctively people then were moved themselves towards marriage. But if they didn't love their partner, then it would be a complete nightmare, because actually marriage is a kind of mutual enslavement. You have responsibilities to your spouse, and if you didn't love him or her, it would just be horrible to have to do any of those things. Like
Definitely,
have
definitely.
sex with them and pretend to be nice to them and bring up their children and whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's all, and I think also what people look for in a spouse now is, but you know what? I don't know. Maybe because some people will argue that love is overrated as far as in trying to make and that is like a new thing that has been introduced into relationships between men and women, or men and women, being in love. That a lot of times it was more so just about like, because families agreed, it was just the thing to do. You really didn't put too much thought into who you were going to marry. It was most of the time it was arranged. You didn't really have a whole lot of selection on who, to
Yeah.
choose from.
Well, as
uh
long as you didn't find them repulsive, maybe if they were good to you and they respected you, or there's mutual respect, you could have a workable relationship and grow to be fond of each other. But I suppose to expect the sort of romance to last a whole life through, is a tall order. But you can have a sort of more, workable relationship, like, well, as long as, that they're not really horrible. You would have the common objective of rearing the children, I suppose,
and
is
see
like
that's
this
and
way
see
to
that's
put it.
that's where I really think it lines, like the common objective, like if two people, they get on well enough. I think you see that with a lot of older people who marry. A lot of times, at least from my perspective, it don't seem like they marry because they're madly in love with that person. But people who are of an older type, who maybe haven't ever married before, it seems like they make a lot more compromises in the spouses they choose. And it seems to be more about like having a common objective. Okay, so what is your outlook? What are you trying to achieve? Where do you see your life going? And how do I fit, kind of situation. But when you're younger, you don't really look at things like that. And I really think that's more of how it was back in the day. Like, it really wasn't there was a lot more that you considered rather than if you loved the person. Um, and I think that more marriages will work if they kind of really just put that on the table. What is our goal? Are we trying to, and then through that, maybe, uh maybe they can come to love each other, or things would work out. They say that people who are in business together or are in some type of partnership and are husband and wife, their marriages seem to last a lot longer and are stronger than ones that uh aren't like that. So, maybe if more people can find some type of something they can work with each other on, work towards, or whatever. I don't know, but I do think that there's a lot of things lacking in marriage in 2023, to where a lot of people are justified in thinking or believing, like, what's the point of it. But then again, you have a lot of incels, you have a lot of men who desperately want to get married, and there's a lot of problems with that because they might not even be ready or prepared. They don't even, I don't know. I think there needs to be more prep concerning marriage, to be honest. Like, real conversations, not no gender war type rhetoric or propaganda or polemics, but like real conversation about marriage in 2023, and negotiating boundaries, and uh who's really supposed to be doing what. Because I think the whole tradition, I mean, I can go on a rant about this, but marriage is an interesting topic, and it's a complicated one as well.
Yeah, because actually, it's the only thing that all the five world religions are supposed to support. Because I guess if they didn't support that, they wouldn't be one of the five world religions. Is I think that the logic of it, because I'm sure there were other ideas like, oh, let's all be gay, let's all not have children, let's just do whatever we want, and no civilization ever came into being because of that. Because at the very least we need sexual reproduction to keep our group in existence, or our species in existence, if we're not human animals. And then if there are all these humans, and they're competing with each other in their national, tribal, imperial groups, then you know you know what else is there but to protect the institution of marriage?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then you're going to suffer degeneracy. The next generation is going to be worse than this generation. They're just going to get stupider and weaker and more confused and mentally ill and more corrupt and incompetent, and then it'll just get taken over by another group who isn't prone to all these mistakes in social policy, I would say.
Yeah, I think Ibn Khaldun touches on this about how civilizations come to be and then end up getting conquered by people who don't suffer from the same decadence, even to a certain extent, could be considered more savage.
Yeah, yeah. I
Then,
mean, China. It's like China's been taken over by Mongol hordes.
yeah, so
Because
there's a certain weakness. There's certain weaknesses that come with riches, a certain comfortability that makes you very soft. Unfortunately, or becoming comfortable can make you kind of soft.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Because I mean, there is this expression, isn't there? You become a victim of your own success. Because of your success, you become weak because you think you're top of the tree. You don't think anybody can attack you, and therefore you think you can break a few rules, and by the time you discover the consequences of breaking these rules,
Too
your
late.
character will be so ruined that you'll think, well, I just won't see what I don't want to see. I'll look the other way. I'll pretend it's not happening.
Mm,
And then, then then I think some of us might be reminded of what Jesus said about, there being none so blind as those who will not see, nor those who so deaf as those who will not hear. And then you know what the problem is, but you look away. You pretend it ain't there, and you don't correct it until your civilization collapses. But actually, you could correct it. But then, you lose the will to live, thinking, "Oh, I would rather die than cure my disease, because the cure is worse than the disease," which is
mm.
another common expression. And
So realizing that there's even something wrong is worse than trying to cure or trying to fix what's wrong for a lot of people. It's that I don't want to even find out. I don't want to recognize, or I don't want to know, and therefore I don't need to solve.
Yeah, yeah. So you get into the situation of denialism. You just deny, the reality of your predicament, and maybe you make up stories about, how wonderful you are when everybody's just thinking you're completely mad.
Hmm. Some say that was the case with Germany when they adopted Nazism because of the predicament they were in. They were willing to believe any and everything, even if it was something as far out there as the Aryan race theory.
Well, I think this is, what the Nazis did. It's not specially, it's not unknown. In Christian Europe, they've always hated the Jews, right? I mean, there were pogroms in Russia. In fact, in England, they kicked the Jews out in 1290 and kicked them all out with hardly any notice at all. So, it's not something that is uniquely German, is what I'm saying. But I think this attitude is sort of like, I never
No, no,
liked
I
them
was I
anyway.
was more so I was more pointing okay, that right there, that's the given everybody, that's like the obvious, but also, from what I understand, the Germans in a time when all these other European countries were developing empires, the UK, France, the Dutch, whoever, people like countries like Italy and Germany, they were real down and out and felt left out. And in order to achieve what they seen these other European countries achieving, they were willing to believe and latch on to any and everything about themselves, even if it wasn't out a far out there theory as the Germans are, some whatever Aryan race theory is about. And to me, that mirrors, like, a lot of people laugh at certain African Americans or certain Western blacks when they pretend to be Hebrew Israelites. But when you look at that Aryan race theory, doesn't look too, and then considering the position the Germans were in when they adopted this kind of, really doesn't seem too different from, people who are downtrodden are willing to believe and latch on to any and everything to pull themselves up and compete with other people. Um,
Yeah, including create a
Yeah,
story about themselves that might not necessarily be true,
yeah.
like the British Israelites or Nation of
British
Islam.
Israelites, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, every attempt of doing this is a kind of attempt to kind of wipe the slate clean, and we want a new national narrative because we just hate what we have become. And that, I think, is really the stuff of revolutions, because every time you have a revolution, you have a new national narrative,
Right.
or an invasion, or a civil war.
I wonder if that's where Europe is headed. You see the rhetoric, I wonder because it seems like new national narratives are being developed. What some could argue that there's a invasion happening, an Islamic invasion, whatever, Middle Eastern invasion, however you want to say it. But I wonder if Europe will hit a breaking point one day with all the things going on in its territory, rising cost of living,
Yeah,
Uh,
and then that they will overthrow the liberal order, because that's what always happens when, you're silly enough to support some war, and the people, back home, with rising prices, and maybe crop failure, um you know they'll overthrow you if they're suffering enough. Yes, they will put up with a lot of crap, but that there will come a breaking point. And you know this free speech thing, it's not just so that we can feel good about ourselves that we have, our right to free speech. I think it is actually necessary for the protection of the ruling classes themselves. It's like they should care what we think of how they're doing their job. And, that this is joke going around that, what they seem to be doing is like, oh, there's a heat wave. Let's just break the thermometer. So,
mhm.
we don't have to, deal with people complaining about the temperature, but well, the heat is still the same. So that they're not actually being rational, because, you drive, and you see some of these lorries that you drive behind, and it says, a well driven, question mark, if not, call, whatever number you're supposed to
Right.
call.
I was about to say a lot of jobs have these same how am I doing my job, or they have some type of monthly review to see to go over what you've been doing, or they'll even at a certain point have you submit a questionnaire relating to your own management. How do you feel that they're doing when the higher ups come down, or they'll just simply ask you questions, so there's always some kind of, yeah. And if we had that with our elite,
They
the
don't care, do they? They just want to rig elections, it seems, or shut us up when we complain. It's like, oh, they call us a name. You're a Nazi. You're a racist. You're a sexist. Just to shut us up.
yeah, but a lot of us down here at the bottom, our anger is misplaced. We do kind of blame like the wrong, like I see that here in Europe. A lot of Europeans blame immigrants for things that it's really just the laziness of Europeans, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that's so true. And I've thought about it, and I think people's futures are being sacrificed to keep the idol of democracy going. I mean, that's what it's all for. They have to keep believing that democracy is worthwhile, and let's have more of it. And really, people are just beginning to realize that it hasn't really worked. The whole thing
well, I don't
has
believe everybody should have a vote anyway.
no,
I
no.
don't believe I don't do it by gender. I think that's hella extreme for somebody to even put forth that idea. I just don't believe that simply everybody in society has the capacity to even vote. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
because what they seem to be doing is like, well, what's in it for me if I vote for you? Offer me a bribe, please, or
there's not even some people who think about that when they vote. There's some people who simply vote based on just being so damn impressionable.
yeah, it's like, oh, mum and dad, they've always voted Labour, or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. Their friends are doing it. They're watching TV. That's everything that they watch is blaring a certain perspective, one perspective. They don't, anything that contradicts what they've just usually hear, they're not really trying to hear it, or they just tune it out. And so they're just gonna be like a sheep and go follow the shepherd down, or the wolf down his path. So it's that's just there's
It's a
so
stupid
many.
reason it's a bad way of choosing your leader. And
Exactly. I
also,
would much rather we have like at least the Sunni style of a caliphate when it comes to choosing. I'll give them that as far as having people of gravity in the community choosing. Of course, within the community, it's the community who invests their invest certain amount of power or legislative power in this person, but he also makes up a bigger body of people who also have a certain amount of power invested in them to come and choose the leader. That way, it's you don't have every Tom, Dick, and Harry having their input really. It's more at least I think there's a better way of doing it than the way that we have now. In short, I'm not gonna
Yeah, yeah,
walk away.
because if you think of how it's run now in both the states and here, it's like it's a two-party system. And what do the two parties represent? It's basically the working classes and the middle classes, right? And when you think about it even more carefully, it's basically the owners of capital and the owners of labor. And it's like, oh, like it's like the patricians and the plebs, rich and the poor. It's like there's nothing inherently virtuous about you being born working class or middle class. You know,
Right,
there's
and
nothing.
especially in the United States where these things are so fluid or porous, you can be born middle class and end up in the and you yourself, you can end up in the working class. You can be upper class and not be shit and just be carried by your parents.
Mm,
It's in at least, and then my problem, at least in the UK, is like I feel like upward mobility is less. Like you don't have as much upward mobility if you're born in a certain um, situation like you
yeah.
find in the states. And I think that has a lot of people upset. Although there is a certain pride people have in the working class here that you don't see in the United States. A lot of people who are working class don't want to admit, or it's seen as something less than. But here, the working class, there's still a sense of pride that people have in it, and a sense of respect that you have or get by working with your hands. I would just like to see that people in the working class. Although I don't know, man, it's different. I'm still trying. Today, the 31st of July is exactly 5 years I've been or at least living in the UK consistently. I've
Mhm.
visited before 2018, but it's still a difficult. I'm still trying to put my finger on it. I'm slowly starting to understand this society, uh, and the working class here is very interesting because then you see a wide variety of people. There's people who are working class who really have money, you know, but they're working class when you look at what they do. So I'm curious, is it what you do? Is it uh how much money you make? Like what constitutes working class? Anyway, I don't
Well, it's about 'cause working class, I suppose you're a member of a trade union, or you don't have an office job, something like that.
so you can make 150K a year
Yeah,
because
I
they're a
mean,
working
there's lots
class.
of very wealthy plumbers and, people who work with their hands. So, I mean, I wouldn't knock it, and maybe some men actually prefer that because you know, they don't want to work in an office and be bossed around by, you know, HR.
When I was working with homes for students or this place that houses university students here at Manchester or whatever, um we had contractors who would go in and do things, and because I was a cleaner or whatever, I would talk to them and see, and I was privy to what they were doing, and I thought that job was way better than sitting in the office with somebody governing you all day, sitting over you, sitting next to you, bossing you around, making sure you're doing what you're supposed to do, and the only real break that you have is 15 minutes every 2 hours or 30 minutes to an hour every 4 hours and stuff like that. Like they had like the liberty to, as long as you got your work done, it seemed like there really wasn't no strict, you need to be constantly doing this, somebody over you, making sure that you're not on your phone, taking a break, eating, taking a drink, taking too
Mhm.
long, smoking a cigarette, whatever you do. You just had a lot more freedom than somebody working in the office. And then at the same time, from the way they described it, they were making way more money than somebody, or equal to somebody working in an office. And mind you, it's a little bit harder on your body, but then again, sitting in an office chair isn't all that good for your health if you're not doing any extracurricular activities after outside of work. So you
And,
know
and and if you really hate your job, that kind of eats you up inside, doesn't it?
oh, definitely.
Especially if you hate your colleagues and have to attend stupid meetings
Right, and
that you
then
think
just
are unnecessary anyway.
work politics that you're involved in with dealing, because you have to deal with so many different personalities, don't know what you can say to who because they're gonna spread yeah, there's so many uh Yeah, there's so many negative things that come with working in an office from my perspective, or at least being in such close coordinates with your colleagues, which is something I haven't had to experience in a long time. So I'm thankful for it. And I don't think I can go back either. Even with this job right here, I could work from home if I choose to, but I'd much rather go to the office because a lot less distractions. And even when I'm at the office, I'm pretty much left to my self. So,
Hmm.
which, yes, which is beneficial. You just got to make sure that you're disciplined in how you use your time. Um,
What are you doing these days? Do you feel comfortable telling us what that is?
Yeah, I work for a charity organization. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they're they offer numerous services for immigrants who live in the UK. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of to get them situated as far as housing, English as a second language, help them with debt. Uh,
Settling in and all that.
yeah, get them situated with work, even things as simple as even though we're not supposed to, and I even recommended that these kind of services that really are pointless we need to cut out because it's wasting the people who work for us time, which is some people might even just bring their mail, and because of there's a language barrier, they don't speak English or read English. They'll have people read their mail to them. Like, nah, I kind of can't just have people coming here doing that. That's kind of you can get somebody a little bit closer in proximity to do this for you. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but it's a nice thing. They get all kind of grants. There's all kind of donors. There's all kind of funding out there. Whether it be for some type of project you're trying to set up, it could be, you want computers for the community. You have a lot of people. We have a lot of people who come down and use the computers we have. It could be for classes that you want to hold in order to educate certain members of the community that you serve. But all of this is totally free. Again, the money we make is from donors, funding that we apply for. It's a legit charity organization under what is called the CIO.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's cool. To be honest, it was my YouTube channel that got me this job. It was my brother in law who worked. He was working with a guy, or he works next to a guy. He was telling him, "Hey, yeah, my brother-in-law, he has this YouTube channel, whatever." Talking, and he was looking at it. He liked my organization skills. I did kind of, and Roxana is the one who kind of recommended that I tidy some things up as far as presentation, but he was impressed with just how I was organized with it, the people I was bringing on, and he thought
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can contribute some of these same things to his business. And it's making the same amount of money I was making at the last job I was making, so it's not like no increase or
Mm-hmm.
decrease or anything like that. But uh, yeah, it was.
Oh, it's nice to be told that your YouTube channel got you the job. That's great.
Yeah,
Congrats.
not necessarily the content, but the organization skills. He thought, maybe, and there is a lot of stuff that I'm learning on the job at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's only been a couple months working there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, there's still a lot more that I'm trying to learn. But right now, I'm happy with it. I feel like I put together some things that weren't there before. Worked on like the business plan, which is really just editing it, fixing some typos, correcting some sentences or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Employee policy, data protection policy that we didn't have. You really do need an employee policy because you have things like non-discrimination. What happens when you get dismissed, or what the procedure leading up to you getting dismissed, all the warnings and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's yeah, it's decent. It's decent. I'm hoping I could bring something to it. There's a lot of potential for growth. At
Mm-hmm.
this point, there's only been the manager doing all of this, and the whole reason he brought me in was kind of to assist on things that have really been burdening him. Not that they're going to burden me, but the fact that he's doing so much that it would just help to kind of I would even say the same reason why I brought Roxana onto my channel, which has been which she's been a total asset. A lot of times it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult when everything boils down on you, you set up the interview, you read the book, you got to formulate the question. You don't have anybody to bounce these questions off of
Mhm.
to see if they make sense. You're doubting yourself. At least being in collaboration with somebody when when I'm busy, she's able to read and provide questions. When she's busy, I can read and provide questions. So if one person isn't fully up on par, then the other person is. And even when you're both on par, it just works out even better. So hopefully the same kind of collaboration happens with this job.
Mhm.
But again, I'm learning as I go. So I'm
Okay.
happy with it. I like the freedom. For me, that's the best situation for me to work in. If you give me freedom,
Mhm.
I think I can produce. But if you try to constrain me to the usual 9 to 5, I have problems in that type of working environment where people are over me,
Mhm.
bossing me around and micromanaging everything I do.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are even prepared to put up with really crap jobs if they like the people that they work with, you know?
Yeah, janitors love it. From what I've seen and working as what is considered a janitor, you guys call it housekeeping here. I think it's a little bit more feminine, but I much rather say janitor.
Mhm.
It's the people who work those jobs, depending on where they're doing them at. Now I wouldn't say doing it at McDonald's or some, not to knock those people, but if you're in my position and you have not to say I wouldn't do that in order to support my family, but I got to think about something better than that. If you're a janitor at like a hospital, in any kind of medical facility, those people make decent money, and you have the freedom. You could sometimes sit. Heck, when I was working as a janitor, that was the whole reason why I was able to start my YouTube. I would finish my work before time, sit in the closet, read the books I need to read, write, take the notes I need to write. I had a actually large closet. It was like a whole nother room. But
Mhm.
there is a lot of freedom if you manage your time right. My work was, I had a certain amount of work to do within that week across 3 properties. And if I finished that work, I would try to finish my work by Wednesday. I worked 5 days, finish my work by Wednesday. That left Thursday and Friday, unless it was the end of the month, open for me to do whatever I wanted to do undisturbed. As long as I checked in, showed, they seen my face in the morning that I was here, come in around lunch, act like I was doing something, make some coffee so they can see my face some more. Then at the end of the day, all right, see y'all on Monday. And then heck, they didn't bother me any. My job, everything was done for the week. Everybody was
Mhm.
happy. So yeah, a lot of janitors like that situation, and and I definitely liked it. The money wasn't bad. I'm definitely making a lot, significant amount more than when I was doing that job. But yeah, it was in concierge as well. Concierge, for anybody who's, so I'm not going to go over the type of jobs that I find to be legit where you don't have, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot better jobs out there, but at least from what I do, like, yeah, I much prefer jobs that have a good amount of freedom to them. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, security as well, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't do it in front of a bar or anything like that. But some security jobs, you are at a building. Again, I worked for a Chinese company that owned buildings in San Francisco, and
Mhm.
they had numerous buildings in San Francisco. Some of them just being built. You was sitting there, you were the only person in this huge building. Like there were times where I fell asleep, times where I just wanted to walk around, see what was going on. Uh, yeah, at least those are the kind of jobs that are out there. I'm pretty sure people can do a little bit better than that, but that's from my perspective, uh,
Mhm.
things that I've did in my past work history.
Yeah, I mean, I get the impression that drivers are much needed, bit for big vehicles.
Yeah, I'm told that a lot too. When I was working concierge at Left Bank Apartments, I would get a lot of people who would tell me that that driving in the UK right now is a big thing, especially since Brexit. It's been like that maybe for like the last several years, to be honest. Driving
Mhm.
jobs have they need a lot of people, but I find driving jobs to be a huge liability. I used to deliver pizzas when I was
Mhm.
like 16, 17. And my first 2 years driving, I racked up so many tickets. I got in so many accidents that they were going to take my license from me. Luckily, I moved to Washington State, and
Yes.
that kind of gave me a good chill period. Even though I was driving in Washington State, I was just way more chill up there, and I moved back to California, and all that stuff kind of really didn't matter at that point when I moved back. But yeah, I always looked at driving jobs as a huge liability because of that reason. Just within that period, I got so many tickets, I got so many accidents, and I was doing so much driving,
Mhm.
delivering pizzas and whatnot. I just don't want my. And then also when I worked in a warehouse, I had a what's that heavy uh, forklift. I had all the license for using the heavy machinery. I had a forklift license and stuff like that. I still refused to use the forklift unless it was for something like you needed me to pick it up right there and put it right next. But if I had to drive up and down aisles, because if you hit something and it was
Mhm.
worth uh and depending on how much the damages were, they would call someone out to drug test you. And at that
Oh.
time, I smoked weed. So at that time, it's like, man, I'm not trying to, involve, I'm not trying to involve myself in, because look, I'm working in Home Depot. The UK doesn't have a Home Depot, so I don't know what would be an equivalent, but you have all kind of building materials, contractors who, all kind of people come there to use things to create, build, or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, you can easily hit a glass door worth $201, and they're just laying all on the bottom floor and you're driving past them. It's just nothing to. And so I just found that and so most driving jobs are like that, to be honest. And that's why I've always, even though I don't do anything that's suspect in that sense, I just still find it to be a liability to be put in that situation if you hit or break something or hit someone while you're on the job. So I just try to
Mhm.
keep things. Yeah, I'm not too much of a fan of those kind of those kind of jobs.
Yeah, I can imagine. Hmm.
But there's a lot of freedom. I know truckers. I actually wanted to be a trucker. I went once upon a time. I went to a trucking school. I sat in the introduction. I had the money in place. Um, but I chose to I enrolled in Berkeley City College instead to go into history. But when I was at a crossroad, trucking was something I was very much interested in because the money is there and the freedom
Mhm.
is there. You can be on the road a couple days at a time. You have to manage, how long you can't drive. It's not like, okay, I'm going to try to bust this out in it's an 18-hour trip. Okay, I'm gonna try to drive the whole 18 hours. Like, no, you can only drive for so long and then you have to take a break. Um, but as long as you gauge it right, there's a lot of freedom in that. The money is there, especially as a Black American. You have a lot of people in that industry doing well. So, there was a lot of things I thought of that would give me the freedom I desired when it came to a career. And I'm still kind of looking for that right now. I'm a little bit better place in the UK 5 years. Haven't been here for 5 years than I was my first year, not having paperwork and then still trying to get settled over that period of time to where I'm at now. But yeah, hopefully the next thing I do, I have a. Anyway, I'm not trying to treat you like my flipping therapist. I know you and Gazal act as each other's.
I mean, do you two actually have in mind the kind of job you'd like to do ideally?
Oh man, I don't know. My life has been like so many different. My life hasn't been stable the last since I left my mom's house. I've moved so many different places. I've done so many different things. I'm on my
Mhm.
second marriage, so
Mhm.
things have constantly been changing since 19. I'm 36, but I think I'm in a lot better place to like stabilize myself. I really don't want to leave the UK. I like Manchester.
Mhm.
Um, what I want to do. Oh man, it's a difficult thing to say, man. At this point, just make money. I have a few
Mhm.
different options. Again, this what I'm doing right now, there's a huge opportunity in developing where it can develop into a career that would be prosperous depending on how much I put into it. uh,
Mhm.
and take it seriously. Because I mean, there's just so much more to do that I feel like I could do. Because
Mhm.
it's only one. For so long, only one person has been running the show. With a second person, I feel like I can contribute a lot. Um, my brother-in-law is into a whole lot that he's trying to get me into. He has a coffee business where he has tons of beans from Tanzania, and the coffee is actually really good. I drink it at home. I'm not even gonna lie, and I
Mhm.
like it better than this freeze dried stuff that or the Insta stuff that. So he's really trying to break into that, and he would like to make me a roaster if I learned what that business is about.
Mhm.
Um, and he already has a shipping company that's doing really well. So
Mhm.
I don't doubt. I remember I had a cousin or my cousin's husband told me like 10 years ago that or a while ago that he was going to start a security company, and I doubted him on that only to ask him for a job 7 years later. um, so I'm not going to doubt my brother-in-law in this endeavor. So there's a few different things, and then there's also just go back to school. I was close to finishing my AA transfer degree in world history, which would have put me in a position to where I could have went to a university,
Mhm.
transferred to a university. It was already I already had university credit, so I would only have to had done. I would only need to. I would only need like 2 years, approximately 2 years of study at a university, and then get
Mhm.
a BA in a certain a certain subject in history. Um, but
Mhm.
it's for me. It's really just about taking care of my family. I have to think about what's gonna really put money in my pocket and put food on my table for my children. Uh,
Sure.
so really over that, but I'm always in a good position because my family. I don't want to depend on my family, but I don't come from poverty. My family would be supportive in whatever I did if they really thought that it was going to be something beneficial for me.
Mhm.
They've always had my back so far. Uh,
Mhm.
so it would be yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult thing to say. I was talking to my wife about this earlier, Claire. It's a difficult. I'm in a difficult situation as far as trying to figure out which way to go.
Well, I suppose you can only, do your best in your current job, so you can at least say that, I deserve a better job because I'm doing the one I'm doing now, well enough. And
Yeah,
so
things are stable right now, so I can't complain. You
mhm.
know,
Mhm.
I'm not in need uh things. I don't have anything to worry about. Uh, Although I was dealing with a whole lot before. I had to replace my laptop, my work phone broke, my real phone broke. So
Mhm.
I'm that was a huge, and it really made me feel materialistic because I was like, I damn near busted out in tears when I spilled coffee all on my laptop. I do everything from this laptop, from
Mhm.
talking to you right now to edit my videos, record my videos. And my daughter came in and asked me to help her with something, and I couldn't blame her, even though she's a catalyst in it. I didn't want to
Mhm.
blame her, but I reached up and my elbow hit my coffee that was next to my laptop. It spilled all on the. Oh man, I wanted to bust out in tears because
Yes, I can imagine. So
it's
so you were without it for how
a
long
day,
before you
a day.
a day? Okay,
Yeah,
so
I had to buy another one. The other one, I took it to Apple. They looked at it. They said it's not worth even it to repair it is going to cost more than the laptop. And to be honest, it worked for until last week. To be honest, I used to let my daughters I used to put like some like Pepper Pig on for my daughters and let them use it to keep them
mhm.
quiet. And but it kind of like just died out last
Mhm.
week. But I still might get it fixed though. I still think it's worth getting fixed. Uh, and then my work phone, I dropped it in the toilet. It was in my it was in my back pocket.
It's like such a dangerous place to put it, isn't it?
I know when you're doing that, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I came up, yeah, man, it sounded like I dropped a second turd in there and then just boop. I was like, "Oh no!" And then the same thing that happened to my laptop when I spilled the coffee on. So what happened when I spilled the coffee on my laptop? The coffee crept up my screen,
Mhm.
and so then the same thing happened with the phone with the toilet water. I tried to pull it out instantly, and
Mhm.
there was water already in it, and it worked for a bit. And then as the toilet water crept up the screen, it cut out. And so and before that, my phone fell out of my hands when I was walking, hit concrete. I took it out of the case to clean it, so I didn't have the case on me. It was in my backpack,
Uh-huh.
and so it's been a horrible month. July was a horrible month for electronics. Just put it
So
like
three
that.
three bad things happened with electronic equipment,
Yeah,
or two.
iPhone, work
Yeah.
phone, MacBook all went
Uh,
out, and I had to, and the MacBook really cost quite a bit to replace. It's a little bit better one than because the one I had was an older model. It's a little bit
mhm,
better, and they didn't sell that one anymore, or at least they did, but it was going to be refurbished, and
mhm,
so I had to just go to Mac and buy one that was a little bit better. It's the same model, but a little bit, I think, faster processor or something. Uh, and yeah, I need it for work. I need it for this YouTube thing. Otherwise, I'm just totally fine with the phone. But because I have other commitments, which really got me thinking about monetization for YouTube. Like, because my whole thing with monetization is that I would invest into what I'm doing. Like, because I use my laptop for so much concerning YouTube, if it would
mhm.
be nice to have monetization to where whatever money I made from it, I could store it somewhere, and in this kind of situation, use it to where it wouldn't harm me financially in my personal life, or when I need to spend money on other things. So, and then also my car, I had to get the MOT. The insurance was about to so that was $600 on top
Mm.
of all of this. I've had to pay for all of that within the month of July. It really, you know, kind of, I don't want to say financially set me back, but I had to come out some pretty pennies.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
And so, yeah, but it's life.
You've gotten over that bump. Well, you're still around anyway.
Yeah. So it's nothing. I can only look up from here, basically, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
But how about yourself? What's been going on? How's the book been
Well,
going?
well, I
Uh,
haven't really checked, for numbers of people buying it, because um, I wrote it because people say, "Well, we're not going to read your book," and then it's like, "Yeah, are you reading it?" I don't think so, because you think you already know what I'm going to say, so you're not going to read it. And oh yes, thank you for buying it, but it doesn't look like you're going to finish it because you think you've heard it all. It's all right. I wasn't expecting all that much, but I think it's useful ultimately to have it all in one place, instead of just on my blog.
Are you gonna?
Um,
Is that it? Are you gonna come out with the part two? Are you gonna develop your thoughts any more further? Is there gonna be a topic you're going to expound upon? Is this just the beginning, or
I mean, I can really only expound on it if people, ask me, interesting questions that will allow me to develop my ideas. But, unfortunately, it is the case that um, there's an unspoken agreement amongst Islamophobes not to talk about it, because I think really that they don't have an answer. They don't have a better idea. So the only option left to them is to not give it the oxygen of publicity. And I also understand that Muslims don't like me saying, "Oh, my interpretation is better than your interpretation," but I don't think they want to argue with me about that either, because, well, I can think of all kinds of arguments. It's like, well, if you've interpreted your religion so well, then how come you're not the ones in charge? Instead of being the ones always complaining about being victims of Western imperialism. And if you've interpreted your religion so well, then the Ottoman Empire would never have fallen, would it? So I think uh, the Shias have obviously made more effective use of Islam than the Sunnis. But then the Shias are an ancient civilization because they are Persian. Well, I mean the biggest Shia group are in Iran, and I guess traditionally they've
I
been.
heard something very interesting today because I've been trying to find this guy Michael Berry. I've been trying to find his contacts today for the longest, and I was listening to a lecture. He had said that the Ottomans was a Sasanian inspired dynasty, but then
Um,
they were also inspired by a lot of other things as well.
oh, I mean, I've heard it said that the Turks are really Greeks, but who've converted to Islam because they're basically the same people, but have been.
Uh, I'll send you this article, but
Thank
I
you.
kind of see where you're going with it. But the Turks, the Ottoman sultans, at least, they stopped being Turkic very fairly quickly. I think like maybe around the fourth or fifth sultan, they were already marrying people of Hungarian, then Italian, Greek, Macedonian descent. To where they were really at the end of it a very European dynasty, very mixed European dynasty. But yeah, there is a lot of similarities with the Greeks. You'll find if you go on YouTube things about the Greeks and the Turks being brothers. The Cypriots and Cyprus, there's their weird relationship with the Cypriots and the Greek. I mean, and the Turks. Uh, yeah, it's very interesting. Turkey is very interesting. The whole Turkic to Turkish migration is a very interesting story in and of itself. How they came from that region where Mongolia is at today and ended up in Anatolia or Asia Minor, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm. Did you know that gay marriage was legalized in the Ottoman Empire? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, they correct and say decriminalize, not legalize.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I brought this up to somebody the other day about Ottoman decadence, the
yeah.
modern.
Did you? If you look at the Wikipedia entry, you'll see quite naughty pictures of men being naughty with each other.
Yeah, that kind of art was prevalent not only in the Ottoman Empire but in the Safavid, the Mughal, all those gunpowder empires as they're called. The Ottomans went through a very decadent period. Uh, the Safavids were doing some very strange things too. The Mughals we know were doing some interesting things, some of them. But yeah, the Ottomans, yeah, they were very interesting civilization. I'm surprised that neo traditionalists praise them so much. You know what I'm saying? Like they're kind of, especially in the later stage of Ottomanism. You really see but I don't know. That thinking Muslim guy got a maybe what we believe about the Ottomans might be a myth. The decriminalization or legalization of homosexuality might be one of them. That guy thinking Muslim did a podcast recently with an Ottoman historian, a Muslim Ottoman historian, and
Hmm.
he's supposedly dispelling certain myths about the Ottomans involving coffee, the printing press, slavery, and stuff like that. So maybe maybe what we're talking about is one of those things
I
that
mean, you could say, I mean, well, I've said anyway that the reason why the Ottoman Empire fell, was because they legalized gay marriage. And I mean, you can think of, any number of things that they did that is obviously against Quranic principles, such as, um, breaking the four wives max rule, because we know
they
that
weren't
the
the only
Ottoman.
ones though. Like
Hmm?
they weren't the first.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, the whole idea of harems is obviously a bad one because all the countries that had it
Okay, no, okay, I
eventually.
understand what you're talking about. But in that context, yeah, and then that came with its own set of politics,
Yeah, and you're creating a rival power base, when you have the harem, because
which is what they created.
then the women will become powerful, actually.
They were putting the battery in the back of their sons, who were the children of the sultans, to do what they some of what they were doing.
Mm.
I mean, this is evident all throughout. I mean, look, I got a whole shelf. My top shelf underneath the Qurans is nothing but Ottoman history. I'm not that like astute to. I mean, I'm not like that well studied, but I remember I went through a phase like 5 years ago where I was really interested in a lot of different aspects of Ottoman history. There were weird aspects. There wasn't like a chronological start with Uthman Ibn Ertugrul himself all the way till the last sultan, but it was more so looking into different things that like cuisine, coffee, musical instruments, certain figures, painters, jurists. I was actually looking into one painter. Um, I don't know if he was with the Ottomans, but a certain Venetian painter painted an Ottoman, and this style that the Venetians had crept into Islamic uh, civilization and influenced a certain painter who came from modern day Afghanistan. It was interesting to see. So, yeah, the Ottomans was a very interesting civilization, very cosmopolitan. And it's I think if Muslims really were to look into the Ottomans to like a real deep extent, they would be very shocked at some of the things that were going on. Not even from, well, I'm not gonna say from the beginning, but definitely from after a certain point. Anyway,
Yeah,
and then
carry on.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, the interpretation is all because there's so many ways of interpreting, look, a piece of legislation. And obviously, you have to interpret in the right way for the thing to work. And if you do, distort it just to, make it fit what you want in the short term, you're actually going to be messing around with so many things that will affect all kinds of things in an unintended and unwelcome way. And unfortunately, there will be people who want to use the rules to suit them and interpret the rules in a way that is not in harmony with reason or humanity, and therefore it's so important to make sure that the best people are in charge of the interpretation. But then you create a problem about, well, who do you mean by the best people, and what and
And I think that's the problem that Islamic civilization has been dealing with for a while. And I remember when, I don't hear it anymore, but I remember when I first became a Muslim, I used to hear this a lot, that the kids who were messing up in school, who got the F's and D's or whatever, were sent to the madrasa, while the kids who got the A's and B's were sent to university to be engineers and stuff like that. And in that sense, if you have the people who were the flunkies basically going to the religious schools, then becoming the jurists, the muftis, the sheikhs, the imams, or the whatevers, you know, this explains the state that we're in right now. You know what I'm saying? You
mm,
sent the wrong people, and I mean, I guess you wouldn't want these people to be doctors and scientists and in those kind of positions either. But you know, you do want the, basically what I'm trying to say is you want the best people in the right position.
exactly, and then everything will be fine. Because it doesn't really matter. It's like, yeah, you can have all these rules to kind of revise or scrutinize the decisions of these people, but ultimately you just want them to get on with their jobs without you looking over everything that they do.
Exactly.
That
At
is the
least that's the
ideal
kind of manager
situation.
I am.
Yeah, and you want them to be trustworthy, but how do you make them trustworthy? You know, I mean, obviously they need a moral education, and if you want them to have a moral education, then you must give them a religion.
Or yeah, you need that, and I think other literature surrounding. I think Islamic civilization has done a good job at developing literature uh, around developing a moral character. I think you would call it adab literature. Um, I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head. Uh, there's a lot out there. I can't think of it, but you have it in across different civilizations. The one I can think of off the top of my head, pertaining to Greek culture, is Cyropedia by Xenophon. That's one that I like a lot, which is like in the genre of mirrors for princes. Um, I think if we had more stuff like that going on for the children, I mean, or for us in
Well,
society.
Aesop's fables would be a start.
Yeah, or even sometimes I get down with my YouTube channel like, damn man, I feel like people who content isn't as good as mine in the same lane as me are going further than I am. But I think about like the rabbit and the hare, things
Mhm.
like that really are beneficial for the psychology of people. You know what I'm saying? When they're put in a certain type of position, it's simple and corny as it sounds, but like you said, Aesop's fable. One that I really like is the lion and the three bulls, um, where it was like, or it was four bulls or three bulls, but one white bull, two black bulls. The white bull stood out at night, which caused the lion to notice where the bulls were at, and they were scared of the lion. And then the two bulls conspired against the white bull. Then the moment that they conspired against the white bull was their downfall, because that bull was like a triangulated the power that they had against the lion. And then once the lion was able to get the white bull, because the bulls conspired against the white one, the lion was able to pick off the other two very easily. So the moral of the story was like, you know, you, you were stronger together, and the moment you let that one go was the downfall of all the rest. So and you can interpret that story in a lot of different ways, or go look into it, because maybe I might have spun it in a wrong direction. But yeah, those kind of stories, I don't know, really does something even to adults, to how they can kind of figure out which way or how to take a certain course of action. Just put it like that.
Hmm. And these, moral stories are no longer taught. I mean, they teach school children just complete nonsense, or actually, harmful things.
No, yeah, I gotta
Like,
teach them Pepper Pig, and or I gotta my kids gotta watch Pepper Pig, and uh, even though I don't know if Pepper Pig is bad, my
it's just
adults,
dumb, isn't it?
huh?
It's just dumb, I
It's just
think.
dumb. It's just dumb. It's just it's just dumb. And then when I wonder why my kids are goofy, you know what I'm saying? There you go. But that's what they want to watch. I try to put on something that's a little bit more. To be honest, my kids are actually really good with educational stuff, especially my oldest one. My little one is a little bit more goofy,
Mm-hmm.
which she's the main one who wants to watch Peppa Pig. I can put on number blocks for my oldest one, and she's all right. But yeah,
But that's probably because she's only little.
nah, my oldest one has been kind of like that. Like, even like like my as far as artistically, my youngest one is far more developed than
Mm-hmm.
like where my oldest one is at. My youngest one is like, even just holding a pencil, dancing, moving, how she
Mm-hmm.
responds to music. Like, she's way more, where my oldest one, even sometimes at this age, she doesn't hold a pencil or color the same way that, or the way she holds a crayon isn't the same way as my youngest one. But then where my youngest one is at, where my oldest one, when she was there, she, was way more with it as far as ABCs and one, two, my oldest one is 4. She can read, we walk by signs, she can read it just fine. She pulls out books, read them just fine. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
my youngest almost will be 3 in December. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
she'll be at that rate at 4 years old. At least the rate she's going, I don't know if she'll be like that. So they have different, different capabilities. I don't think it has to do with age, but just because, yeah, my younger one is just way goofy. She's the clown, but
Mm-hmm.
my oldest one is more serious. Even at 4 years old, she's kind of like, yeah, serious. So
Yeah, I was just thinking. Oh, because you were talking earlier about listening to rabbis on their channels, and I do listen to Rabbi Misrachi, and I, and I've done it for several years now, and what I've noticed with his sermons is that that there are these readings. They go in a a certain pattern, throughout the Jewish year, and they tell the same story again and again in a cycle, and I think it's really very useful to, it's like, oh, Moses did this and his sister did that, and they fought and said mean
Rabbi
things.
Lord Jonathan Sachs.
No, Rabbi Mizrahi. I mean, I really
Okay,
recommend.
that's the guy who was talking to Dawkins that I was talking about.
No,
Jonathan-
no, Sachs is the one I
Yeah,
think.
Jonathan Sachs is the one I was talking about. Talking to Dawkins earlier.
Rabbi Mizrahi is kind of
No, I know who he is. Your
controversial.
our friend Judas I Chai
Yes.
shared some things from him.
Yes, and he was really keen on Rabbi Mizrahi, and then all his rabbis warned him against Rabbi Mizrahi. So that's the end of it. But they basically treat him like he was a security threat or something. And
Why?
what they do is they kind of make you scared to even get on the plane in case you get turned back, or you arrive and they interrogate you for 3 hours, and until you think, well, I don't want to even bother with that. So
That was my experience flying to the UK first time.
okay.
I still got the paperwork that they let me go with about uh terrorism. Also, they held me for like 7 hours when I
Bloody
got off
hell.
the plane. Coming to They asked me what am I here for. I was like to visit a friend. Who's your friend? I told them the name. My wife's name is like Arabic sounding, Halim. I'm not gonna say her name on, but it's they was like, okay, wait here. And then they pulled me, they searched all of my bags, they recorded the whole conversation, they sent me paperwork. I still have it. I screenshot it too. Sometimes if I didn't think that it would maybe deter some of the people I try to invite to my channel, because they might think the wrong thing about me, I would share it on Twitter for clout. Like,
Hmm.
look, man, I really been put to the test. Like, you're a real Muslim, you get one of these. Uh, Ain't nobody doubt it. I got paperwork. I got pictures of me taking the shahada, and I got paperwork of being harassed for my Muslimness by immigration when I arrived to the UK.
Uh-huh.
But they made it up. They upgraded my rental to a Mercedes because they felt kind of bad. Because look, I had like all the right stuff on me when they wanted to search, because at that time I was very much into like Islamic Spain, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish relationship. And then I was telling them like, man, if I'm really this rigid extremist, like why am I reading literature about how Muslims, Jews, and Christians got along in Spain? you know like I had I can't remember her name, Mary something something. She wrote that book, Ornament of the World. Yeah, Ornament of the World, even though they got bad reviews from people in her field by saying like this is a very liberalized understanding of how these people got along. Still, I was arguing like, why would I be reading such why would I bring such literature to read to the UK if I'm on some you know jizya for Jews and Christians, and I want a Islamic. Even though I was coming out of that mindset, that really was where I was headed, though. Like I was looking at things in a more cosmopolitan way, uh,
Hmm.
and they I was able to joke around with them. They joked around with me. Like I think they kind of felt bad for holding me up, which is why they kind of helped me out with the rental from the Vauxhall to the Mercedes. Uh, which
Hmm.
was an extremely scary experience because it was raining. Driving
Hmm.
from Gatwick, I never drove on the other side of the road. I mean,
Hmm.
with the steering wheel on the other side either. And
Hmm.
uh, yeah, it was Gatwick to London, raining,
Hmm.
bigger car than what I expected.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. First time in the UK,
Well,
it was
why
fun.
didn't you just take the train?
I don't know. I have somebody coming in September. I don't
Hmm.
know anything about the trains in
Okay.
London, in the south like that. I only recently learned how to catch the train from Manchester to Bolton.
Okay.
So I'm really trying to figure out what am I going to do in September because I have a friend I'm going to meet down there, and I'm going to make the trip by myself. And because my driving license, I'm in the process of getting my driver's license because my California driver's license expired on my birthday. Now I got to get a UK one. I'm forced to do it. I can't just drive down there. I normally would do short drives with my situation because my car is insured. Only when I'm like going to the store, which is really like down the street. But I wouldn't
Mhm.
drive like 4 hours one way. So that's really taking a chance uh,
Mhm.
with my situation. So I'm gonna try to. I'm gonna have to figure out the train system, especially in order to show him around. But then I can always say I don't know this stuff, so it's like we can just figure it out. But
Well, the website's giving you, train times and whatever, and you can,
it's not the
buy your
it's the going in the tunnel. The tunnels is like a flipping maze. I don't understand the tunnel system. Uh,
you mean a platform system?
Whatever you guys call it, when I get down there, it's like a whole nother world. I cannot figure out. I've tried. Luckily,
Well,
I've
you
always
have to
had my
look at
wife.
the display, like, if you want to catch a train to wherever, go to this platform or whatever. Um, yeah. So, but if you look at the um, website, they say, you want to go travel from A to B, and you have to change, and where you change, and which platform you go, that all that stuff. I suppose you have to read it pretty carefully, the first
Yeah, I
time.
noticed that with signs in the UK, it's either you have to read them pretty carefully or you guys just don't have them. And what I mean by that is like there's no street signs. I don't know what it's like in London because I really don't pay attention like that when I'm down
Well,
there.
it can be a bit complicated. I mean, the other day it's like, yeah, this was transport for London, and it's like, they tell you where to go, and they'll even give you all the stops that the bus will stop at, and where to change and how long it'll take if you walk there, and they'll give you directions about which way to turn to get to your final destination if you put the postcode down. So in that way, they it can be quite helpful. And then it tells you, oh, there might be tube strike, or whatever travel issues on the day that you want to travel, and that kind of thing. So you might find it quite helpful. But yeah, I mean, unless
Well, I don't because I'm used to a little bit more efficient system. I believe maybe I'm used to this system. That's why I believe it's more efficient. But I honestly think that if you were to drive in California, catch the train in California, you will find the road signs more straightforward, and you will find the catching the train, catching the bus way more straight. Actually, I have no problem with the bus system here, especially here in Manchester. The bus, and from what remember in London, catching the bus is actually really decent. They come
Mhm,
regularly, and there's a whole lot of them. So I have no complaints about that. It's more so the train, and
mhm.
I finally figured out how to read highway signs to help me to get where I'm going without navigation, as long as I'm headed in the right direction. So yeah, in California, it's way more straightforward. We got street signs everywhere.
You got fewer road signs and stuff, right?
No, you guys have way fewer road signs here. We have them on every corner.
Oh,
Every corner, every block. You guys don't even have blocks. I say, yeah, I'm down the block, around the block. You guys don't know what I'm talking about.
a block is a building, right?
A city block, like you make, man. It's like you ever see in the movies when somebody's in a plane and you're looking down and see all the squares in the city. If you ever look
Mhm.
down in New York, you see how everything is so square, like the
Yeah,
streets.
because it's a planned city, right? And it's like it's on a grid system.
Okay, is
And
that why the UK is the way it is? Is it not on a grid system? Is it not
well,
because
some cities are planned, like Milton Keynes, but the older ones aren't. They just sort of, oh, there was a main street, and then there are all these branches, and
when
it
you
might
give
have a.
somebody directions in the States, you could literally say, like, look, go around the corner, up the block, hit a right, go
Mm.
straight. And you could say like up the block, go around the corner, down the block. People, when I say that here, like, hey, look, go down the block, go around the corner, up the block. People do not understand what I'm saying. What do you mean block? And it's like, damn, man, we really have like squares to where even if you miss the place you're trying to stop at, you can just hit like three rights and you're back where you're at.
Hmm.
Where in the UK it's like, damn, if I don't really make a U-turn or make a 3-point turn wherever I'm
Mm.
at, I have to flip in. Uh, th- I'm not gonna have like a corner. I can a right, and a right, and I'm back where I was. Just came from. It's
But
like,
you would have GPS, would you? Your sat nav.
yeah. Well, I'm talking about when GPS did. I don't know how Brits used to do it when GPS didn't exist. Because
Yes,
I
somehow
couldn't.
they'd have
You
to
don't have
read
street
them.
signs. If you make the wrong turn and you don't turn around immediately, you're taking a whole different direction. Uh, I will say Brits are pretty good drivers, though. I'm not gonna, you know,
Hmm.
um, driving on British streets is pretty savage. Like the lines really don't matter a whole lot.
Hmm.
They matter to a certain extent. The staying within the lines matter way more in the states uh, than it does here in the UK. I'm
Staying
not.
within the lines. What does that mean?
Yeah, the lines painted on the road.
Oh, right, right.
You know,
Staying in your lane.
yeah, staying in your lane. No,
Hmm.
well, because sometimes it's just a single lane. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? And but the way you kind of have to maneuver, it forces you to you got to swerve out of the way for a bus or something like that, or somebody's about to make a right, and you got to get into the bike lane. Or you just have to move. A lot of driving here, if you were to drive in the States like that, you would get a lot of tickets. It's normal here because the way the roads are set up and what you got to do. But that was the hardest thing to get over is that when you're in California, you have to. Yeah, in the West Coast in general. I've been and lived in Washington State too. You have staying in the lines is important. Staying in your lane is important. But of course, I could say lane, but I just say staying in the lines. Like if the cop is driving behind you, of course you're trying to stay in your lane. But even if you were to like veer for some reason, if you wanted to be a prick about it, even if you were to like just go off out of your lane a bit, for whatever reason, even if it's like, hey man, I'm trying to avoid what you call it in front of me, you know, that excuse will fly in the UK because people do it on a regular basis, get out of their lane to avoid such and such a bus, somebody turning, whatever. In the United States, I don't know. At least my part, those type of excuses didn't work so much. And the police, they were really on you if they seen you. They would, order you drunk or something, or and there was a huge ticket culture as well in the States that you don't find in the at least in Manchester. I don't know. People might get pulled over in London, but I don't see the police pulling people over a whole lot in order to give them tickets, which feeds the, you know, county, society, wherever that money goes. But it's definitely some type of enforced to generate some kind of monetary gain for the county, in my
Hmm.
opinion, at least.
Yeah.
But
So are you saying you get more tickets here or in the States?
no, in the States, there's a whole culture of, pulling people over,
To get
checkpoint.
money out of them. Well, I mean, people feel like that here too, speed cameras and parking tickets and, lowering the speed limit to 25 or 20, you
Oh yeah,
know.
yeah, you might be right. It's a different. It's showing itself in a different form here. Whereas the
Mhm,
United States, it's a little bit more barbaric. I don't want to say more barbaric, but it's more savage, like with the police engaging you, pulling you over, inquiring you, seeing what's going on in your vehicle, opens you up for all kind of other things that if I'm just running through a red light, if I'm just speeding past a camera, they're not going to catch. They're only going to get me for the, what I'm caught doing. Whereas,
mhm.
yeah, in the States, there's a whole culture of police behind you. Oh man, fuck! I hope they don't pull me over, pulling you over. Hey, what are you doing? License and registration? Are you on probation? You know, I don't see that going on in the UK. In the UK, I've been pulled over one time, 5 years driving.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, I've had for a couple years, I had a job where I had to drive between 6 different sites in Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
I only got pulled over one time. It was my first time working that job, and that was because I was driving back to back or behind my colleague, and the police thought it was suspicious the way that we were following each other. But other than
Mm-hmm.
that, I've never been pulled over. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
5 years of driving, nowhere near like in driving 2 years in California because I got my license at 16. I moved at 19, so about 2.5 years, about 3 years of driving in California. Nowhere near the amount of times I got pulled over in those 3 years compared to my last 5 years driving here. And mind you, I drive, I want to say the same frequency. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and there's really nowhere that you can pull people over. Like the roads are so small. Like for you to pull somebody over in traffic, you're gonna have to hold up traffic to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So yeah, the police are definitely different. I think we talked about this last time, the intimidation of the police here and the way the police and maybe it could do the police some good to start pulling more people over in traffic. I don't know, but the police are just way too relaxed here, in my
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah.
even when I see them strolling around the neighborhood, it's like in this neighborhood I live in. I know there's a lot going on. I know you can't. I know you're not really doing your job, just walking around the way that you are. But yeah, on that
What do
note, Claire.
you don't think they're doing much? Is it because of the female police?
No, I don't. I don't want to blame female police. I got in trouble one time saying when I was coming back from I used to go to mechanic college, Wild Tech. A female cop pulled me over. I was young, like 18. I didn't understand the gravity of what I was saying. But I remember when she pulled me over, I told her that she was only acting this way because she was a female trying to impress her male colleague. And she took me to, she locked me up for that. I spent about several hours in jail because because of that comment.
Right.
And again, at that age I didn't understand. And it's probably good I said it then in 2005.
So you wouldn't say it again now?
No, no, it's way worse in 2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said that in 2005. I was on my way home from Wild Tech, and she pulled me over. uh I dropped my wallet have fell. I would already have my wallet, but then it fell. And then I told her like, man, my wallet is on the side of my seat. I just need to grab it. And she was like, all right, but get out the car first. And I had an attitude, and
Mm-hmm.
she was gonna let me get my wallet because she seen it was right there. But then I said what I said. She said he had no identification, or then that's the direction she spun it. He didn't have no identification, didn't have a wallet on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I took him in California. If you don't have any ID when you're pulled over, that's enough for them to take you uh, back to where they to I don't want to say to jail because sometimes they don't always lock you up, but at least they try to figure out who you
Mm-hmm.
are. But in that situation, yeah, they put me in a cell, and I spent 3 hours trying to figure out. They probably could have found out earlier than that, but they want to teach me a lesson at least for what I said to that
Yes.
lady cop.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Huh. All these brushes with the police. I think I was once pulled over for cycling on the pavement. They gave me a ticket, but it wasn't. It was just a.
yeah, I can't believe that in the UK. Uh, before buying a car, my first year, well, I wouldn't say my first year, my first when I was doing wrestling and going to jujitsu, I biked to those two places. So I would bike everywhere in Manchester. I would bike on the sidewalk all the time. I didn't know that it was illegal or
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't. In the States, you can bike on the sidewalk. It's not no nothing.
Well, people do quite often. People do that. I mean, I think it's actually quite dangerous for old people these days. I mean, sometimes old people are themselves a hazard to others with their electric electric scooters, which can
Yeah,
go
yeah, I
quite
think
fast.
the cyclists in the UK suck. Like I don't like it because a lot of them ride in the street and they hold. I have to consider them. I have to if they force me into other people's lanes in order to not hit them.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas in the States, like at least in my part of California, Northern California Bay Area, East Bay, Alameda County, they where we used to have two lanes, they created one lane and they used the second lane to create parking and a bike lane.
Hmm.
And so, there's bike lanes everywhere. It doesn't, bicyclists do not get in the way. Although in Seattle there was a problem with bicyclists. A lot of people, I don't know what's up with people in those type of climates. They like to bicycle a lot. I heard in Holland or Netherlands they like to bicycle a whole lot too, and the climate is very similar. I find
Hmm.
that very interesting. But
I think it's just the idea of being environmentally friendly, isn't it?
yeah, my wife grew up in Holland or the Netherlands, so she tells me a lot about the Dutch people. They seem to be like some very interesting people. Yeah, environment friendly, uh, financially aware.
Hmm.
Uh, what is it? What is it? Are we doing Dutch? Are we going Dutch for lunch or something?
Yes,
Where we pay for ourselves or something like that.
yes,
So
going Dutch. Mm. Yes, that's supposed to be mean. I mean, I suppose that's as mean as a Dutchman.
yeah, what's up with those people over there? Netherlands, the Swedish people don't feed their guests. I remember that was a big thing uh, a couple years ago, a year ago. Uh, yeah, I don't know, man. I
Oh,
don't know.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, yeah, Swedish people supposedly don't feed their guests when they come over. Like if you send your children
Oh,
over there to play with the kids and it's lunchtime, your kid got to watch the kid eat.
really? Oh, I didn't know that. That's
But
terrible.
yeah, yeah, that can't Google it. It was something a minute ago. It might have been just a Twitter thing, but I remember it was it was. I thought it was funny. A lot of the
Swedish hospitality.
Swedish hospitality, yeah,
In defense of Swedish hospitality. Oh yes, yeah, yeah. So this it says. Uh, oh, apparently that it came from. Oh, what does it say? So it was. Yes, its subject started trending on Twitter. Um,
yeah. Swedish people don't feed their guests. Or I'm looking at Know Your Meme though. It's just I guess it was a 2022 thing.
mhm. Yeah, this is in the Spectator, and it was 2022, last June.
Yeah, it was funny. It was hilarious. I don't know. Social media is going to destroy humanity. I swear to God. Like
Well,
I can't
because it's what is it, because it speaks such nonsense, and
all the
people
time.
believe it, and they want to believe it.
My wife don't understand it. She doesn't social media not one bit. Like not
Mhm,
at all. I don't know. My if you want to me and my wife cannot be the complete opposite of and like any more opposite of each other than what we are.
mhm,
You know, I'm on social media. I like history. Whatever I like, my I love peanut butter, right? I could probably eat a jar of that Sun Pat peanut butter, the
mhm,
big kind, in like a couple of days. It's done. Half
mhm,
a whole loaf of bread, peanut butter in a couple of days, done for me. My wife
mhm.
won't even. She'll wash dishes and leave the knives with peanut butter on them for me to wash. She hates peanut butter.
Oh, she got a peanut allergy?
No, she just doesn't like. she just
How can
just
anybody
doesn't
not
like it.
like peanut butter,
She
though?
just doesn't like it, and she's that stubborn
Mhm.
type of person. When she
Won't
doesn't
even
like
touch it.
something, there's no budging.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit more flexible. Like me, it surprises me how it works sometimes though. We just couldn't be the most. We couldn't be any different from each other though. At the same
Hmm.
point,
Well, it's nice that you got married and you get along. And,
we try. We get along sometimes. It takes a bit of having thick skin.
yeah, I mean, I was just saying today to Gazelle that actually all the political activism has been quite good because you you really do have to park your ego for a lot of these things, or you just be permanently, you know, you'd have permanently injured feelings about all the mean things people say, people pretending not to understand, deliberately misunderstanding you, telling lies, saying you're evil, saying you're mad, saying you're stupid, you know.
All that goes on in marriage. Fortunately,
Yes.
except for some of it's not deliberate. I would say, and sometimes my
You
wife,
don't really know though, do you? You
you
don't
don't.
really know they're doing it on purpose just to, drive you crazy.
Well, I'm at the point I figured out. I don't think my wife is doing it on purpose anymore. I really don't think that she gets me. There's a cultural divide on so
Mhm,
many different levels, from her being Somali to her growing up in Europe to me being Black American growing up in the United States. It's just so many. Growing up in California, there's so many different. Like, I really don't think that she when I say something that, if I was to say to another Black person or even to my mother, would be no problem. When she hears it, oh my God, it's the worst thing I could have ever said. And it's like, no, but I don't mean it really like that. Like, I'm really trying to get you to and so just sometimes we spend more time interpreting, trying to give exegesis on what we mean by the shit we say, than
mhm,
actually, you know, dealing with what we were saying in general. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a weird situation when you marry somebody so outside of your culture. Like, the whole race thing is such bullshit, because I'm probably sure if I marry somebody of I'm married to somebody of African descent, but culturally
mhm.
we're just uh worlds apart. That
Yeah,
takes a lot of
yeah,
negotiating.
yeah. So, y I think Jews have this idea of hashkafa, which is outlook, and it's like, yeah, you can be really observant about the Sabbath and or this or that of Jewish life, or you could not be, and so even though you're supposed to be of the same religion and even of the same tradition, you might have wildly different ideas about questions of observance, and it can be, well, very very sticky. The problem of you know,
But
getting the
that's
right
the one
thing.
thing that people do ask me about. People don't typically ask about the cultural differences between my wife and I. They see how I approach the religion of Islam, and they understand Somalis to be a certain way with how they understand Islam and practice it. They always say, "What does your wife say about your beliefs?" And she really doesn't say anything. She doesn't.
She doesn't want to. She doesn't know where to begin.
Hey, she knows fully what I do. She knows what I've expressed. I talk to her about it sometimes. She sees the books on the shelves. She fully aware of, but she doesn't. Her, I think more of her thing is she sees me fasting in Ramadan, praying, my five prayers,
Mhm,
or at least, I'm not. Of course, five prayers is ideally, not every Muslim prays their five prayers when they're supposed to. We
mhm,
all try our best, but make sure that I pray and do all the things that are observantly a Muslim. She doesn't really get caught up in the little finer details of all the stuff that you might find Muslims getting upset about or fighting over on social media. But when
mhm.
it comes to it's all the other things that she's more concerned about, the minute details that really have nothing to do with religion, that I find to be the most mind-boggling. You know, but that's just people. But yeah, and so it's not really religion that she has a problem with. I think for Muslims, if you just really have a general understanding, like it's really just the five pillars in general that you're kind of looking for in somebody,
Mhm.
being a good person. So if they meet that criteria, it really shouldn't be too much of a problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's a question I wanted to ask you about praying. So, do this open palm approach. I know you fold your arms when you pray, but is there um, in one of your prayers where you kind of hold your hands, palms facing upwards?
I think, isn't that the Canute prayer that you say in during the dawn prayer, which is more of a political prayer, where you're praying against your enemies and praying for your uh but some Muslims do pray with their arm with their palms out. Like, it's more of a dua. It's not like a part of uh the obligational the obligation, whatever the prayer that we pray a part of our obligation to the religion. Uh,
Hmm.
but
So
there's more of
dua is an extra prayer, is it?
yeah, it's just like how Christians pray. How Christians understand prayer to be asking for things. Or I'm not gonna say Christian. I'm not gonna throw them on the bus like that. I know some Christians pray as a means of worship, but when Muslims understand prayer like Salah is more for worship, but then when we say Dua, it's more so like asking for
Asking
something.
for stuff.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. So
right.
you'll see Muslims take their hands, put their palms out like, "Oh Allah, whoopty whoopty woo," and they have their palms out and stuff like that. But during the prayer, that's obligation. Part of the obligation. It's not. You won't see that too much. But then the Canute prayer is. Some people pray it every dawn. I know my brother-in-law pointed it out when he went to Malaysia into the masjid that they prayed the Canute prayer every dawn, and he felt like it's only supposed to be done when there's like something going on, that you
Mhm,
pray this politically charged prayer. So I think they might put their arms out for their hands out for that, but it's usually folding arms and then arms down. That's usually the debate in the
mhm,
obligationary, if that's even a word, prayer.
mhm, mhm,
If you pray with your arms folded or down to
mhm,
your side.
mhm,
And so for me, those kind of things don't matter. I always like to refer to the story of the heifer when God commanded them to kill it.
mhm.
It was a very simple command, and they made it more complicated by asking more and more questions. About how they should go about it. And if God tells me to pray, I think where my hands is at is one of those things like, man, now I think you're just reaching, like God said,
Mhm.
pray, go pray, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and don't ask any questions because you end up making life harder for yourself in the end.
Yeah. And then you still can't even fulfill the obligation now because you just made it that much harder for yourself. And so,
Mhm,
I try to that's really, I think about that story the most in the Quran. That's really my approach to religion. Like, look, tell you to do it, just do it. You know what I'm saying? All the minor details that you'll find in fiqh, with them just trying to waste paper and give people more things to read about. I don't know what they're, but a lot of these things really don't matter to me.
mhm. I mean, for me, I mean, what just annoys me is that, well, actually, it seems obvious that such and such should be done. And I just don't even think that there's, any argument about it. It's like, well, if only the Jews would rank the four Gentile religions and rank, Islam the most no high. But, obviously they don't like Muslims. They don't want to be, promoting the religion of the people whom they hate and who have sworn to destroy and kill them. So I guess that's not going to happen. And also, Jews and Muslims are still a bit afraid of Christians because, they're associated with, you know, Western imperialism. So I think, a lot of it is almost psychological, subconscious, not actually acknowledged. Um, but yeah, I find the idea of hidden idolatry really so useful. I don't know.
I really wasn't buying too much of it when you were first kicking it, maybe a couple years ago when we first, met and was talking about these things, but definitely seeing the rise of certain figures and the cult following that surrounds them. and seeing reputable Muslim scholars such as fall for people like Andrew Tate. Again, this is nothing against Andrew Tate because some people might he is who he is, and I don't blame him for it. But then people who should know better or have better sense, I kind of do. You know, I see them hinging their reputation on this guy. It's like you don't even know him. He's involved in such kind of all, and it just I see that as a form of idolatry. You know,
Well, yes, because I suppose they just want somebody to save them,
be their
and
daddy. That's which really
everybody wants a daddy, and if if you want the job, if you can carry it through, and want to say the things that need to be said, then I guess that he's the one.
But that can't just be the only criteria though. Like, okay, he's saying the things they need to, but then there's a whole bunch of other baggage that comes along with that, which again, and I'm not looking for somebody who's perfect, and I'm not looking for somebody in general, but I'm just saying that at least for Muslim scholarship, I'm not talking about 16-year-old boys. You know what I'm saying? I was listening to people like Mac Dre at 16 who was more or less talking about the same things Andrew Tate was talking about, but he was a rapper, you know. So I'm not faulting like 16. I'm talking about grown men, who really go up to bat for this guy, like, and don't even have all their facts straight. That I see as a form of idolatry. I could see if you knew and you still chose to, but the fact that you're having so much because you're really going based on faith. You know what I'm saying? And for you to just put your reputation online, stir the pot in your community over this, you're acting almost as a new prophet has arrived. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
people want that. They're just tired. They want a hero. They want, they want their daddy. They do.
Yeah, I remember my teacher put me in check one time when he said, like, man, you're acting like you got daddy issues. I was like, damn, man, I got my father's been in my life. I for sure don't have daddy issues, but shit, man, when you say that to somebody, it really do make you think, like, man, like, what is it? What is it with some of these people sometimes? And when I'm looking at this Andrew Tate character, again, nothing against him, I'm just looking at his grown men followers, like, damn, man, you really were missing something in your life. Like, it really do look like people are missing something in their life when they're so aggressive or they're so gung-ho behind how they feel about certain individuals who they don't even know. They just give them an idea that makes them feel good, speaks to their situation to a certain extent, but it can't just be that. Like, Andrew Tate does speak to the situation of a lot of men, but at the same time, like, you don't want to people are, as Ghazal mentioned for herself, people invest a lot of emotion, time, energy, whatever you want to call it, into certain figures, and the moment that figure isn't who they imagine them to be, these people, some people can really take a downward spiral. You see it in religion when certain religious figures don't live up to certain expectations, which people have invested a whole lot into. And it's no different from these superstars. And just for like religious scholarship to not be aware of these kind of things, I mean, to fall for it, you have Zaytuna faculty members. You know what I'm saying? Uh, Falling victim to this kind of. You have Muslim scholars who call themselves philosophers and things like that falling victim to this. Like, come on, man, you got to be wiser than this. Like, even if you agree with them, like he says something, but you don't. I wouldn't put my reputation on the line for some other man I don't know. Especially if he's linking up with him can do a whole bunch of like like I don't get no benefit from dealing with this guy. This guy don't even get no benefit from me supporting him.
Well, I
So.
suppose some people like to call things early, and the fact that they're persecuting him and he's not backing down, it's like suddenly there is a hero because everybody else caves in immediately, right? And he's just showing signs of.
But he's lightweight caving in though. He's saying all this shit. If he was stood on, I mean, he did kind of admit that in the Candace Owens interview. He did kind of admit that he doesn't feel bad for what he needed to do back then in order to make money and still like and stuff like that. But if I don't know, man. I feel like he is backing down. He's saying all the shit was fake. Like, you know, him saying he could spin the whole thing, me saying I'm a pimp, pimping hoes degree, all type of shit. Like, man, I'm influenced by rap music. Like, I'm not no real pimp, or, you know. I mean, but then again, I don't know if he really wants to say all that. He's dealing with some serious allegations and charges or whatever. But you
Yeah,
know,
he'd have to be careful
yeah,
about what he does admit to. I
yeah,
mean,
what he admits to. And so, and then what is he really standing on then?
well, oh, okay. Well, I mean, what's not in denial at issue is that he is Muslim. Be he is
He's a
he
perennialist Muslim
represents
though.
male leadership.
He's not
That
even the
is.
Muslim that these Orthodox Muslims
But
like.
it actually doesn't even matter about the scholarship because people would say, "Oh, Daniel Hakikachi, he's not really an Islamic scholar," and I thought for a bit, and I thought, yeah, because actually all these Islamic scholars, they're not saying anything, and they're not known for any, clarity of position. They're behaving like politicians, which is why YouTubers win because of these YouTubers who say what they say, and if you say it consistently, then people will remember you for it.
Yeah, and if you got some really good editing skills, you know, get Ali. I'm telling you, Muhammad Hijab Ali Dawa got more pull in a considerable amount of Muslims than religious scholarship.
Yes, yes, that's what I'm trying to say because what they say is well simple enough to be remembered by ordinary people. So even if you're some distinguished Islamic scholar, but nobody's heard of you and nobody even understands what you're saying because you just write long essays and boring books, then you might as well not be there.
Right? And yeah, so yeah, so there's it's I mean it's lightweight a mess though. It kind of gets me depressed when I think about it. You know, the state of because I mean it don't get me depressed, but I'm curious on I'm really curious where this thing is headed though. Where do you
I don't
where
think it really matters about the interpretation. I mean, I'm not really that bothered about Daniel's very hardline interpretation. It's like
that's
it's not
always going
it's
to exist.
Yeah, it's always going to exist, and what we want is the principle that that America should have an official religion. I mean that's what I'm pushing for because I mean my narrative is basically that all the bad stuff coming from
No,
America.
I think
What
you.
is
I
the
think
problem?
but
America no
it
religion.
can't be. I don't know, Claire. I think the official religion, single religion, is antiquated. I even think in the UK it's kind of antiquated. I think that there needs to be a more Abrahamite kind of push. But then again, you kind of can't do that any
Isn't
either because
Islam Abrahamic enough for you?
no. But I'm saying a more because you're against Christianity, where I'm not really all that against Christianity like that.
I'm just saying the problem is idolatry. Which I think we are supposed to take seriously because it is mentioned in the commandments and it's repeated in the Noahide law. So it's not like oh never mind about idolatry and blasphemy. It's like yeah, it's a big deal. Jews get executed for it, so that's why it's a big deal. So
I just think that the way that I just think that not, I'm not saying uh I just think there's a little bit because I think idolatry in this day and age is way more sophisticated than what it's ever been. I just think
yeah,
that
hidden idolatry is well has the same effect
you're gonna
because
have
it's
to come with a little bit more sophisticated dawa to get people to realize it.
realized about hidden idolatry.
Yeah, about hidden idolatry.
Oh, I mean, I define it as not doing what your religious principles say you must do while giving irrelevant and irrational reasons. So it's like you obviously should, I mean, just by knowing the Quran, you would know that gay marriage is not, it would not be acceptable. I mean, you should be able to tell, but there are all kinds of excuses that scholars cook up to say it's okay, really, um, and it's like it should be obvious, like if something, if sodomy is a sexual offense, why would you be marrying sex offenders? I mean, surely you're going to say, oh, sex offenders are criminals. We shouldn't encourage criminals to marry because then they'll just think, we'll just get more criminals being born.
Yeah, I think
And
actually your bodies have the opposite opinion about that too, especially when it comes to say if it's not homosexual acts that two people have been involved in, but even if it's just premarital acts, those two people cannot marry. In case they were trying to use that as a like, oh, we were forbidden to marry by our parents, so we're just going to do this, and then we're forced to be married, like it is in certain Muslim understandings, like, oh, if these two people do such and such, then they need to be together.
yeah, it's like a shotgun marriage, right? Shotgun
Yeah.
wedding.
When
Well,
really that could have been the plan from the beginning, that you denied them the regular way, and so they would put themselves in a position where it has to be a shotgun marriage now, because it's like they already did the deed, so what can you do? But
yeah.
in a body school that doesn't work.
It mean so how do the body school treat it?
I don't know the details, but I just know that
Oh,
aspect.
so they're not allowed to marry. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
they're not allowed to marry just because they committed. They're not allowed to
Oh,
marry.
I'm sure there's a verse in the Quran that says fornicators can only marry fornicators, and you know, so the idea that non-virgin men can marry non-virgin women
Yeah,
is
well, they
is
gotta probably sneak out another one that's like that, but it can't be the one who they did. I think it's in order to stop people from abusing or having some kind of loophole and you know
mm,
getting into marriage with people who maybe otherwise they shouldn't. But okay, we're just gonna do this deed, and now we're forced to because we did it together, so we've got to get married.
yeah, or it could be, well, I'm not interested in marrying you if you can't produce children. So, but I seem to quite like you. Let's do it. And if the woman gets pregnant, then it means that the man is fertile, the woman is fertile. The purpose of the marriage is viable, i.e., children, and so it should go ahead on that basis.
I don't understand the technicalities, but on that note, Claire, I am gonna depart. It's almost 1 o'clock, and I do have to
Yeah.
work tomorrow. So
All right then. Well, thank you for coming by. It's good to talk, and have a good day tomorrow. And good
yeah, I'll
night, and
see you
sleep
around.
well.
All
Yeah.
right. Yep. Yep. Peace.
Bye.